Hey literature nerds, get ready for a wild tale from one of the greatest works in English literature. It's the Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer. And believe me, it's a roller coaster of a story. Buckle up folks and let's dive in. So, picture this. There's a plump, barely sober miller who's blabbering about the scandalous affair between a cranky old carpenter's flighty wife and a smarty pants scholar. These two lovebirds go to great lengths to spend some alone time together, pulling off all sorts of crazy tricks. They pretend to be insane, stage a fake biblical flood, and even expose themselves in public. But wait, there's more. You see, there is a parish clerk who is also smitten with this married woman. He is relentless, serenading her every night outside her house. So, annoyed by him, she tries to scare him off by offering her rare end for a kiss. Yeah, I know, bizarre. But this guy ain't phased, and he ups the game by flatulating in response. And guess what? The clerk's got a hot poker as a surprise. Ouch, that's gotta hurt. Now, you might think this is all just a dirty joke, but it's actually part of a seriously esteemed work. The Canterbury Tales is a collection of 24 stories, each told by one of Chaucer's lively characters. You got your typical medieval folks like a knight, a clerk, and a nun, but there are also some lesser known characters like the reeve and the manciple. These tales are written in Middle English, which looks pretty different from the English we speak today. It was used between the 12th and 15th centuries and evolved from Old English after the Norman conquest in 1066. The Middle English alphabet is mostly familiar, but they threw in some funky symbols like York to represent sounds like Y, J, or GH. Now, all these characters meet up at the Tabard Inn in Southwark. They're all on a pilgrimage to Canterbury to visit the shrine of a murdered archbishop named Saint Thomas Becket. And guess what? The nosy host of the inn decides to spice things up and makes a competition out of it. Whoever tells the best tale gets a fancy dinner. If it weren't for this pilgrimage, these diverse characters would never have hung out. See, back in the Middle Ages, society was divided into nobles, clergy, and the working class. But Chaucer throws all that out of the window and mocks everyone equally. It doesn't matter if you are a cook with dirty jokes, a serious parson, or a high and mighty squire, they all get roasted. Chaucer uses different language styles for each character to make fun of their perspectives. The knight tells a romantic tale of love and destiny. The working class narrators serve up hilarious comedies filled with crude language, kinky stuff, and slapstick humor. It's like a smorgasbord of entertainment for every taste. Now, here's the kicker. The Canterbury Tales is actually unfinished. Chaucer introduces 29 pilgrims in the prologue and promises 4 stories from each, but he never picks a winner. Maybe he got too caught up in his own fantastic creations, or maybe he just loved every character too much to choose. Who knows? So it's up to you to decide who comes out on top. And that's the story, folks. So grab a copy of the Canterbury Tales and dive into this wacky, unfinished masterpiece. It's got something for everyone, and you will have a blast exploring the colorful world of Chaucer's characters. Enjoy the ride. Let's take a look at the characters of Canterbury Tales. Chaucer, appearing as one of the characters in the story, describes the others when he meets them at the Tabard Inn at Southwark. The majority of the characters will tell a tale to the others as they ride toward Canterbury. These are in the order they appear in the general prologue. First up, we got Chaucer himself, but as a pilgrim this time. He is the one telling us all these crazy tales and takes on the role of the narrator. He spills the tea and entertains us with the 17th and 18th tales. Now let's check out the knight, a true gentleman. He is all about honor, truth, and being a chivalrous dude. He kicks off the storytelling with the first tale. Then we have the squire. He is a nice son. He is a dreamy and poetic young lad. He's got a sensitive soul and shares the 11th tale. Don't forget the yeoman, the knight's trusty servant. He doesn't have his own tale to tell, but he's there to support his master. Moving on to the religious crew, we got the prioress, also known as Madame Eglinton. She is in charge of a priory and represents the nuns. She tells us the 15th tale. Then we have the second nun, who is the prioress's secretary. She joins in on the storytelling fun and shares the 21st tale. Oh, and there's the nun's priest, one of the 3 priests traveling with the prioress. He jumps in with the 20th tale. Now let's talk about some not so holy folks. The monk is a lover of the worldly pleasures like hunting, riding, and boozing. He shares the 18th tale. Next up, we got the friar, also known as Hubert. He's a sneaky clergyman who keeps the donations for himself. He tells us the 7th tale. The merchant is a serious dude who does not trust women. He's got some trust issues for sure. He spills the beans in the 10th tale. Then we have the clerk, a smarty pants from Oxford University. He's all about knowledge and books. He shares the 9th tale. Now let's meet the man of law, a fancy lawyer who knows his stuff. He's a wealthy dude and gives us the lowdown in the 5th tale. The Franklin is a landowner and a big foodie. He loves to eat and enjoy the good things in life. He shares the 12th tale. Now here's an interesting group, the 5 tradesmen. We got the haberdasher, carpenter, weaver, dyer, and tapestry weaver. They're all buddies and travel together, but they don't have any speaking parts. Still, they add some flavor to the crew. Check out the cook, a hard-working dude who cooks for the tradesmen. He loves his drinks and knows his way around the kitchen. He spills some culinary secrets in the 4th tale. Now let's sail with the shipman, a captain of a ship. He's got some wild tales to share and takes us on a nautical adventure with the 14th tale. The doctor of physic is a greedy astrologer who thinks he knows it all. He's all about money and shares his expertise in the 13th tale. Get ready for the fabulous wife of Bath, or Alison. She's a widow who's had 5 husbands and has traveled the world. She's got some spicy stories to tell in the 6th tale. Now here comes the parson, a super devout and honest clergyman. He's all about practicing what he preaches. He gives us the final tale, the 24th one. Oh, and let's not forget the parson's brother, the ploughman. He's a hardworking and charitable dude, but he doesn't have any speaking lines. Still, he's part of the gang. Now let's talk about the miller, or Robin. He's rough around the edges and loves his drinks and mischief. He shares the 2nd tale. The manciple is a caterer who knows how to get the best deals on food for establishments. He's got some secrets to share in the 23rd tale. Here comes the reeve, or Oswald, who's like an estate manager and accountant. He knows all the secrets and shares the 3rd tale. Say hello to the summoner, a dude who serves summons to ecclesiastical courts. He's got some wild stories to tell in the 8th tale. And riding alongside the summoner is the pardoner. He sells indulgences and fake holy relics. He's got quite a tale to share in the 14th one. Last but not the least, we have the host, Harry Bailey. He is the innkeeper at the Tabard where the pilgrims start their journey. He is the one who proposes the storytelling contest and settles any disputes that come up. Oh, and we have a surprise addition, the canon's yeoman. The canon's yeoman is not introduced in the general prologue, but he joins the pilgrims along the way and tells the 22nd tale. So, there you have it, folks, the quirky crew of the Canterbury Tales ready to entertain you with their tales. It's finally time for the journey through Chaucer's tales. We'll be looking at some of the characters and their stories in a brief manner. Here you can see a list of 20 important tales, which I'll be explaining along with visual cues. The Knight's Tale. First up, we've got The Knight's Tale. This story is all about chivalry and romance. So there is this duke named Theseus who comes back after kicking some butt in Scythia with his new wife Hippolyta and her sister Emily. But then he stumbles upon a bunch of crying ladies who spill the beans. The tyrant Creon killed their husbands and left them unburied. Theseus ain't having it, so he takes down Creon and gives the ladies the chance to bury their dead properly. All is good, right? Well, not really. After Theseus kicks Creon's butt and takes care of business, he comes across two young knights, Palamon and Arcite. These guys aren't completely dead, but they are in rough shape. Theseus could have just finished them off, but he's feeling generous, so he decides to lock them up instead. No chance of getting out or paying any ransom. They are stuck in prison. Tough luck, huh? Years later, Palamon catches a glimpse of the stunning Emily, Theseus's sister-in-law, strolling around her garden, and bam, he's head over heels in love. But wait, there is more drama. Arcite, who's up in the tower, spots Emily too, and shouts out that he has also got a massive crush on her. Well, that puts a dent in their bromance, and suddenly they are not best buddies anymore. It's like a love triangle gone wrong. So we got these two knights, Palamon and Arcite, who end up in a crazy love triangle with Emily. They were buddies, but now they're enemies because they both dig her. Arcite gets released from prison, while Palamon escapes and they decide to duke it out. Theseus catches them fighting, but the ladies, Hippolyta and Emily, beg for mercy. So he comes up with a tournament instead. The winner gets Emily's hand. Drama alert! Fast forward, it's tournament time. Palamon and Arcite each lead 100 knights for a big showdown in Athens. They party hard, pray hard, and get visions about their fates. Long story short, Arcite wins the joust, but his horse freaks out and takes him down. He dies, but before kicking the bucket, he tells Emily to marry Palamon. They do, and everyone lives happily ever after. The Miller's Tale. After the knight's story, the host asks the monk to share a tale as noble as the knight's. But hold up, the miller, totally hammered, interrupts and declares he is going to tell a story about a carpenter. The reeve, whose name is Oswald, is not happy because he used to be a carpenter himself. Chaucer warns us it might get a bit crude, but he's got to tell all the tales for the prize. So here goes the miller's wild story. Alison, the young wife of John, a jealous old carpenter, gets involved with Nicholas, their housemate and a young astrology student. They hatch a plan to fool the gullible husband into thinking a flood is coming, and he hangs tubs from the ceiling as lifeboats. While the husband is snoozing in his tub bed, Alison and Nicholas get busy in her room. But wait, there is more. The next day, another dude named Absalom shows up, desperate for a kiss from Alison. She decides to mess with him and offers him her backside instead. Furious when he realizes the trick, Absalom comes back later, but this time Nicholas takes the same position as Alison did the previous time. And guess what? He gets a hot surprise, a branding iron on his rear end. All the shouting, screaming, and commotion wakes up the husband, who is convinced that the flood is here and crashes down from the attic. Crazy, right? The Reeve's Tale. The miller's tale that you just saw did not sit well with Oswald the Reeve. He was all offended because he used to be a carpenter himself, like I said. So he warns the miller that he'll get payback for the story. And guess what? He totally follows through with his revenge plan. In this hilarious tale, A sketchy miller near a college gets caught stealing corn and meal from his customers. Two college students, John and Alan, decide to teach him a lesson. They take a sack of corn to the mill, ready to catch him red-handed. But the cunning miller unties their horse, leading to a wild chase that lasts all night. Finally, they arrive at the mill and ask to stay the night. While everyone's sleeping, John and Alan plot their revenge. Alan suggests he's going to have some fun with the miller's daughter, and John cleverly moves the baby's cradle to his bed. When the miller's wife mistakenly climbs into John's bed, thinking it's hers, he seizes the opportunity. Chaos ensues when the miller wakes up in a rage, but his wife mistakes him for one of the students and whacks him with a club. John and Alan make a swift exit with their stolen flour, leaving behind a tale of mistaken identities, cheeky pranks, and a lesson well learned by the miller. It's a light-hearted story filled with wit and humor that will leave you chuckling at the clever antics of these mischievous college students. The Cook's Tale. After the reef story, Roger the cook is having a good laugh. He thinks that sneaky miller got what he deserved for messing with those students and making fun of their smarts. Now the cook is all pumped up and promises to tell an epic tale. But the host playfully reminds him that he better make it super awesome to make up for all the terrible food he has served the gang. Let's see if the cook can cook up a good tale this time. Now it's a bit of a mystery because we only have a fragment of the cook story. But here's what we know. The cook story is all about a mischievous apprentice cook who loves to gamble and chase after ladies. Unfortunately, his wild ways get him fired from his job. But fear not, he finds a new place to crash with a buddy who happens to have a wife. And here's the twist. She's a shopkeeper during the day, but a lady of the night after hours. Quite the scandal, huh? Now here's the tricky part. We are not exactly sure how Chaucer meant to end this tale, and some versions of the Canterbury Tales don't even include it. A real literary mystery, I tell you. The Man of Law's Tale. Alright, so the host is all like, hey, time is ticking, man of law. You gotta deliver on your contract and pay off that debt. And the man of law is like, hold up, Chaucer's already covered all the awesome stories out there, and I'm just a plain speaker, no fancy rhymes for me. But don't worry, the man of law has got something up his sleeve. He heard this tale from a merchant way back, and guess what? His story is also going to be all about merchants. It follows the journey of Constance, the daughter of a Christian emperor. She's got quite a rough time ahead. You see, she marries a Syrian sultan who converted to Christianity for love. But the sultan's wicked mother has some sinister plans. She wants to wipe out all the Christians at the court, including her own son. Poor Constance is the only survivor and ends up stranded at sea. Eventually, she lands in Northumberland, where she manages to convert her hostess wife. But things take a nasty turn when she is falsely accused of killing the convert. Divine intervention saves her, and she goes on to marry the king. But guess what? Another evil mother-in-law throws her out to sea once again. After facing more misfortunes, Constance reaches Rome, where she is finally reunited with her husband and her father. Phew, talk about a roller coaster of an adventure. Chaucer's version of this tale might have influenced other writers like John Gower's Confessio Mantis. Just a tidbit. The Wife of Bath's Tale. Buckle up for the Wife of Bath's Tale from the Canterbury Tales. She's quite the character, let me tell you. Before the wife starts her tale, she spills the mains about her life and experiences in a long-winded prologue. She is a real believer in learning from experience rather than blindly following authority. And guess what? She's had 5 husbands already and she's proud of it. She ain't buying into that whole one husband for life thing. She's all about defending her choices, using the Bible and all that jazz. Solomon had loads of wives, and St. Paul said it's better to marry than burn with desire. So there you have it. And don't you dare try to tell her that God commands virginity. No, she's all about enjoying those sexual organs for both function and pleasure. The wife goes on to spill the tea about her previous husbands and how she mastered them all. But as soon as she gains control over one, he croaks. Talk about bad luck. Then she tells us about her fifth husband, this young guy named Junkin. They get hitched, but things go south when he becomes obsessed with reading books that trash talk women. One night she cannot take it anymore and whacks him with the book. It turns into a whole dramatic scene, but hey, she ends up ruling over him in the end. And she swears by that belief, because her tale is all about how wives should be in charge. You go, wife of Bath. She starts her tale in King Arthur's court. There is this knight who goes and rapes a beautiful woman. So he is sentenced to death. But King Arthur's wife, being all kind and passionate, gives him a chance to save his neck. She tells him that if he can find out what women really want within a year, he can live. The knight goes on a quest, asking women and pretty much anyone he meets this burning question. He gets all sorts of answers, but none of them seem right. Now, on his way back, he stumbles upon a group of women dancing around a fire. When he approaches, all but one of the women vanish. And guess who's left? An old, ugly crone. She's like, hey, I'll tell you the answer you seek, but you've got to promise to do whatever I ask in return. The knight agrees, because, well, his life is on the line. So she spills the beans. Women want to have the same power over their husbands as they do over their lovers. Simple, right? Here's the twist though. The crone demands that the knight marry her. He reluctantly agrees because, hey, she did save his life. On their wedding night, she asks him why he looks so down. He confesses that he is ashamed to have such an ugly wife. But the crone offers him a choice. She can either become beautiful and unfaithful or remain ugly and be a loyal wife. She tells him to choose whatever she thinks is best because that's what women want. Surprise, surprise, the crone transforms into a young, stunning woman who is also faithful. And guess what? The knight falls head over heels in love with her and they live happily ever after. Ain't that sweet? The Friar's Tale. This one is all about a corrupt summoner. You know, one of those court officers. So this summoner buddies up with a bailiff who turns out to be the devil in disguise. They team up to squeeze money out of people, sharing the ill-gotten gains. But here is where it gets hilarious. The summoner overhears a guy frustrated with life saying, "To hell with everything, cart, horse and hay all in one." And guess what? The summoner takes it literally and urges the devil to snatch it all away. But the devil tells him it's just an expression, not meant to be taken seriously. Classic misunderstanding. Now, when the summoner tries to extort money from a poor widow, she also says she wants the devil to take him away. Well, this time, the devil asks if she's serious and she says yes. Boom! Off they go to hell. Talk about poetic justice. The Summoner's Tale. Next up we have The Summoner's Tale, which is a revenge tale in response to the friar's story. So it's all about this hypocritical friar who tries to manipulate a sick man into giving him a gift. But the guy gets annoyed and makes an offer. He'll give the friar a gift if he can divide it equally among his buddies. The friar agrees, but here's the catch. He's asked to reach under the guy's buttocks, and you won't believe what happens next. He's rewarded with a flatulence. The friar is shocked and left wondering how to divide the gift among his 12 pals. Luckily, a clever squire suggests a wheel formation with the guy at the center, and they all get to share in the smelly offering. Priceless. The Clerk's Tale. Now let's move on to the Clerk's Tale. Chaucer took inspiration from a story by Boccaccio for this one. It's about a marquis who marries a humble woman named Griselda. But hold on tight because things get intense. The Marquis starts putting Griselda through a series of cruel tests to see if she truly loves him. He even kidnaps their own children, pretending they are going to die. Years later, he asks Griselda to leave, and then he calls her back to decorate his chambers for his supposed new wife. And guess what? Griselda agrees calmly because she has endured all these trials with patience. Finally, the Marquis admits his love for Griselda, and instead of a new wife, their grown-up daughter arrives, and they're all reunited as a reward for Griselda's loyalty. The Merchant's Tale. Now let's jump to The Merchant's Tale. This one is based on a common theme, an older man with a young, unfaithful wife. The young wife, May, deceives her old husband, January, and her lover, Damien. When January suddenly goes blind, May and Damien decide to get frisky up in a pear tree, right above January's head. But here comes the twist. Pluto, the god of the underworld, restores January's sight in a fit of rage. However, May manages to outsmart him by claiming she was just fighting with Damien in the tree because she heard it would magically restore January's vision. Sneaky, huh? The Squire's Tale. It is unfortunately incomplete. Squire's Tale is all about the Tartar king, Cambuscan, who receives 4 magical gifts. One is a brass horse that can fly really fast and safely. Another is a sword that can cut through armor and heal wounds. Then there's a mirror that reveals future dangers, and finally a ring that allows the wearer to understand birds and know all about medicinal plants. Pretty cool stuff. The Franklin's Tale. Now, this story revolves around a classic theme, making a hasty promise. While Dorigen's husband is away, she catches the eye of a squire named Aurelius. He is head over heels for her, but she rejects his advances. However, she foolishly promises to love him if he can magically remove all the rocks from the coast of Brittany. With the help of a magician, Aurelius creates an illusion that the rocks have disappeared. But when Dorigen's husband returns, he insists that she keeps her word. It's a tough spot to be in. But luckily, Aurelius, moved by her devotion to her husband, sets her free from the promise with a heartfelt farewell. Quite the twist, isn't it? Some say Chaucer got inspiration for this tale from Giovanni Boccaccio's Il Filo Como. The Physician's Tale. This one is based on a story that goes way back to Roman times. It's all about the wicked judge Appius, who becomes infatuated with the beautiful and virtuous Virginia. He hatches a plan to possess her by falsely accusing her father of kidnapping her as a slave. Seeing through the scheme, her father decides to protect his daughter's honor and tragically kills her. He presents Appius with her head, and the townspeople rise up against the judge, throwing him in prison where he eventually takes his own life. It's a tale of deception, honor, and justice. Powerful stuff. The Pardoner's Tale. Okay, so after that heavy and gruesome physician's tale about poor Virginia, the host starts praising the physician, using all sorts of fancy medical terms to sound smart. But here's the twist. He doesn't really agree with the moral of the story and comes up with his own version. Fortune and nature's gifts can sometimes be a curse and lead to someone's demise. Deep, huh? Since the mood has gotten pretty serious, the host thinks it's time for a fun and cheerful tale. So he turns to the pardoner. But some of the posh folks in the group worry that he will tell some vulgar stuff. They request a tale with a good moral instead. Now, the pardoner's got some tricks up his sleeve. He tells the pilgrims how he preaches using fancy quotes like love of money is the root of all evil. But here's the thing. He's all about selling relics to people for their sins, even though he is guilty of greed himself. He is not exactly the saint he claims to be, but hey, he can still spin a good moral tale. Talk about contradictions, right? But let's see what story he's got in store for us. In his tale, Three drunken friends set out to defeat death after one of their buddies passes away. An old man tells them death can be found under a specific oak tree. But when they reach the tree, they find a heap of gold coins instead. Greed takes over, and two of them plot to kill the other, to claim the treasure all for themselves. Little do they know, the third friend has poisoned the wine they drink, and they all end up dead. The partner concludes his tale with a grand speech denouncing gluttony, gambling, and blasphemy, while conveniently offering forgiveness for a fee. Quite the salesman, isn't he? The Shipman's Tale. This one's a fableau, a type of story known for its humor. It revolves around a merchant, his wife, and her lover, who happens to be a monk. You can probably guess where this is going. It's a tale of love and deceit, where the wife and the monk try to carry on their affair behind the merchant's back. Sounds like a recipe for disaster, right? Well, this story draws inspiration from Boccaccio's Decameron and shares similarities with folk tales about lovers and their tricky schemes. The Prioress's Tale. Brace yourselves, because this one delves into an anti-Semitic legend from medieval times. The prioress tells the story of a devout young boy who is kidnapped by Jews. They are supposedly influenced by Satan and end up murdering the child because he sings a hymn to the Virgin Mary. It's a gruesome tale where the boy's throat is slit and his body is thrown into a sewer. But miraculously, he continues to sing until his mother and a group of Christians find him. The guilty Jews are condemned to death, and the boy, even in his last moments, explains how the Virgin Mary enabled him to sing despite his horrific fate. It's a chilling and disturbing story that reflects the prejudices of the time. The Monk's Tale. Now, this brawny monk takes the spotlight and tells us a series of 17 tragedies. We're talking biblical, classical, and even contemporary figures falling from grace. From Lucifer and Adam to Nero and Julius Caesar, and even some 14th century kings. He goes on for a whopping 775 lines, listing one disaster after another. But here's the kicker. The knight and the host interrupt because, let's be honest, they are bored out of their minds with this gloomy stuff. The Nun's Priest's Tale. This one is all about our main man, Chanticleer. Oh, must I say, the main rooster. So, Chanticleer is a rooster with not one, not two, but 7 wives. His top hen, Pertelot, doesn't take his dream of being attacked seriously. She tells him to stop worrying and go about his business. But guess what? A sly fox approaches and starts flattering Chanticleer, mentioning how amazing his father's singing voice was. The vain rooster falls for it and closes his eyes to show off his skills, only to be snatched up by the cunning fox. As Chanticleer's owners and the other barnyard animals chase after them, Chanticleer suggests that the fox should shout at them to turn back. And guess what? When the fox opens his mouth, our rooster takes the chance to escape. Talk about a close call. The tale ends with a warning about the dangers of flattery. The Manciple's Tale. Alright, let's not forget the Manciple's Tale. This one is all about the origin of crows, inspired by the myth of Apollo and Coronis in Ovid's Metamorphoses. So, Phoebus had this awesome snow-white crow that could imitate human voices. One day, the bird catches Phoebus's wife with her lover and snitches on them. This sends Phoebus into a fit of rage and he kills his wife out of jealousy. Later on, feeling all guilty, he blames the poor crow for his madness. He plucks out its feathers, turning it black, and hands it over to the devil. Pretty intense stuff, huh? The Parson's Tale. Last but not the least, we have the Parson's Tale. Now, this one's a lengthy sermon, basically a super long talk about the 7 deadly sins. Pride, envy, anger, sloth, avarice, gluttony, and lechery all get a thorough review. The parson offers some remedies to tackle these sins, urging confession and acts of satisfaction like almsgiving, penance, and fasting. It's like a spiritual guide to being a better person. Alright, nerds, now let's look at the themes of Canterbury Tales. The pervasiveness of courtly love. One of the major themes Chaucer explores is this thing called courtly love. It was a big deal back in the Middle Ages. It's all about this idea that true love can only happen outside of marriage. And it's all idealized and spiritual, like love without getting physical. Plus, in this courtly love thing, guys become total servants to the ladies they adore. Fancy, huh? The importance of company. Another theme is the importance of hanging out with good company. Lots of Chaucer's characters wrap up in their stories by wishing everyone in the group well. They're all like, God, save this awesome bunch. It's all about the bond and camaraderie among the pilgrims. The corruption of the church. Boy, do Chaucer have some thoughts on the corruption in the church. By the late 14th century, the Catholic Church was rolling in dough. Those fancy cathedrals and relics were dripping with gold, making even the richest nobles jealous. People started questioning the church's greed and hypocrisy. I mean, preaching against greed while surrounded by all that bling? It just didn't sit right with some folks. Social satire. Chaucer, the master of medieval roasting, takes aim at the 3 estate system: church, nobility, and peasantry. As a wild crew gathers at the Tabard Inn, innkeeper Harry Bailey sets the stage for a storytelling competition. Each pilgrim must tell 4 tales on the journey, 2 there, 2 back, with a free dinner at stake for the winner. Knights, flirty squires, religious prioress, and mischievous monks all find themselves under Chaucer's humorous scrutiny. The satire continues as Chaucer delves into courtly love, corrupt religious figures, and the breakdown of the social order. The rise of a merchant class and intellectual society is evident, and Chaucer himself belongs to both new suborders. Mixing real-life events and characters, Chaucer keeps the pilgrimage lively and entertaining. It's a riot of drama, commentary, and witty tales, making the Canterbury Tales an unforgettable journey into medieval society's quirks and complexities. And then we have the final theme, competition. Alright, here is the deal with the Canterbury Tales. It's all about a bunch of pilgrims having a tale-telling showdown on their way to Canterbury. The host sets the rules. 2 tales there, 2 tales back. And guess what? It's all about competition. In the Knight's Tale, it's Mars versus Venus in a battle of the gods. But it's not just the tales that are competitive. Oh no, the pilgrims themselves get in on the action too. After the knight tells a story, the miller jumps in, ready to one-up him. It's a quieting game, paying back tale for tale. Now, competition can be a blast, but sometimes it slows things down. Between the wife of Bard's prologue and her tale, the friar and the summoner start bickering like there's no tomorrow. The host has to play peacemaker to get the show back on track. So, there you have it, folks. The Canterbury Tales. General prologue is all about keeping it real, exposing society's flaws, and throwing shade at the church's lavish ways. Chaucer knows how to entertain us with his witty tales and sharp social commentary. So, enjoy the journey.